guidelines that if you read them carefully and attempt to adhere to them, you don't know where the line is. You find out where the line is when YouTube decides to warn you or strike you. And it's an untenable situation. As I said, the majority of my family's income is in jeopardy because YouTube has decided that some things that are very strongly supported by evidence are misinformation, and their basis for claiming that is that the WHO or the CDC has said otherwise. But this raises a question. If the WHO or the CDC were to be captured, right, if influence was to be exerted over one or both of these bodies, surely we would need to talk about it on the various podcasts that are on YouTube in order to figure out what to do about the fact that an essential set of organizations that are supposed to be protecting the public health might be doing someone else's bidding instead. Podcasts would be a natural place for doctors and scientists to get together and say, what we're seeing doesn't add up.
Right.
But to take what they're saying as gospel and anything that contradicts them as misinformation, rather than saying, actually, the evidence is with the people you're saying are spreading misinformation, and the evidence is most definitely not with the CDC and the WHO, right? What do you do in that case?
Right. Well, Dr. Kory, where do they vary? Where does the CDC and the World Health Organization not agree?
So we talked about vaccines already, remdesivir. Another important one was this idea of whether the virus is airborne transmitted, right? So there's three ways that you can transmit a virus, right? One is direct contact surfaces, like hand to mouth, right? Like spittle or whatever. You touch your mouth and it goes that way. Droplet, so large droplet transmission from like a cough, and then you lands on your face, or you rub it into the mucous membranes. Or airborne, where it's actually inhaled. And just sharing the air with someone with COVID, you can catch it. That's what tuberculosis is. That's why there's so much infection control practice around TB, because that's an airborne transmitted disease. It took them a year, all of the agencies, to figure out whether it was airborne transmitted. I already wrote an op-ed that was accepted by the New York Times last May saying this is an airborne transmitted. You could see it.
Who disagrees?
So right now, the CDC finally came around and admits that it's airborne transmitted. The WHO still does not.
What?
Yes.
So really, legitimately, to this day, they say it's not transmitted airborne.
Insufficient evidence.
So
that's what the cry? Insufficient evidence.
So how do they feel it's transmitted?
Well, they think that it's all three are possible. They don't think it's predominant, and they just at least the way I've read the WHO is they just don't feel that it's a important mode of transmission. It may be possible, but they really minimize it. Where the CDC says that it seems to be a definite mode of transmission.
Is this debated in science, or is it only debated in these organizations? Like, is it debated amongst practitioners?
It was debated, and the problem is it took time for it to become clear that this was transmitted in this airborne form.